Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mr. Vane Reviews podcast. I am your host, Mr. Vane, and with me, again, as always, is Mr. James Marcello. Say hello to everyone.
Hello, everybody.
All right. So, let's just go ahead and get into this. Let's get started. We'll just go into some of the movie news stuff that has been going on the last little while. So it was recently released, a picture of Jesse Eisenberg, with his picture of a shaved head, for his Lex Luthor role in the upcoming Batman v Superman role. And you and I were just talking about it, so what was, your opinion on that, James?
Oh, he has the cutest baby face ever. Oh, he looks so adorable. He's so young. He's so not Lex Luthor.
He's like 30 years. You are eating those Tootsie Rolls again, aren't you?
Maybe.
I could totally hear you chewing them. We shouldn't have left candy by you.
That will be my last one, I swear.
Yeah. So you think he doesn't look that good. Do you think he was a good choice for the role of Lex Luthor, or young Lex Luthor? Or maybe they could have picked somebody else?
I like him. I'm definitely going with they could have picked someone else.
Who did you have in mind?
The one I had in mind is what I think a lot of people also had in mind is Bryan Cranston.
Oh, yeah. That would have
been perfect.
Were you thinking Bryan Cranston or maybe Walter White? I think a lot of people saw him in Breaking Bad and thought, oh my god, he's the best bald guy being a bad guy ever. And that's why, I agree. When I heard they chose Jesse Eisenberg, I thought immediately, no, it should have been Bryan Cranston.
Yeah. No, when I thought about it, it should have been Bryan Cranston. I didn't think Walter White. Bryan Cranston is amazing. I thought he was phenomenal in Godzilla, and then he died, and then it made me sad because he wasn't in the movie anymore. But that's just, he has that look, that old, experienced, just intelligent look about him that can easily, that would be a good, opposite to Superman, who is young and starting out. Jesse Eisenberg, though, when I think of Bryan Cranston, he has that rugged but superior intellectual voice. Jesse Eisenberg, I really don't want him to high-pitched, but I'm pretty sure we're going to get a high-pitched Lex Luthor, and that would destroy everything I like about Lex Luthor.
Do you think that was a good villain choice for, the Batman v Superman movie?
Yes.
It's a high enough level villain to give them both a challenge, but it's not like Brainiac level of difficulty.
Well, yeah, to start off small, not Brainiac, we don't want to jump the gun that fast. Lex Luthor was a perfect choice. He had to come in at some point, since we have a second Superman movie coming out. He has to be introduced. There's no other person. Knowing Superman's roster of villains, and I really don't know that much, who are the first two people, I'll even say first three villains you think of when I say Superman?
I think of Lex Luthor, Brainiac, and Hank Henshaw, or Cyborg Superman.
Oh, I love that guy. I love him so much. But enough about him. This is not about him. See? Lex Luthor. He was perfect. He had to come in at some point, and this is his time. But,
and they're not doing any, standalone Superman films. You look at the list of DC movies that are coming out, Superman and Batman are only in this Batman v Superman and the Justice League movies. They haven't given them their own standalone movies yet.
That's okay. I'm okay with that. I don't want Superman movies anymore.
You don't want it to get oversaturated?
No, I just don't want Superman movies. I hate him so much.
And there have just been so many superhero movies. The more they try to shove in there, I think the quicker the bubble will pop.
Yeah. It is definitely popular now. And it's just grown so much. Go figure, this stuff we like would have become mainstream, right? But yeah, Hollywood tends to do that. They jump on whatever's the thing, whatever's the fad, and eventually it will die off. It won't completely be gone because as Hollywood has proven before, we still have some genres that have stayed around that are still good, but we just don't want a whole lot of it. And that's what this is going to be like. We have them now, we're going to get a lot of them now, but eventually it'll die off and we'll move on to something new.
And there we go. Speaking of moving on to something new, this next one's just a short thing because we don't really care much for this stuff, but I couldn't help but laugh when I saw it. 50 Shades of Grey needs a new director, LOL.
You know, when I read that on here, I shook my head in disappointment.
Are you surprised? Like, the movie didn't do that well. Like, it made a ton of money, but its reviews are just awful. People were just like, oh, it's just smut on the movie screen, and, I mean, what else were they expecting? But I couldn't help but laugh. Like, the director's like, nope, I'm not doing it. He apparently said there were a lot of arguments about creative differences between the director and the author of the books, and so director gone, they're looking for a new one. Surprise, surprise.
What made me shake my head in disappointment was what you have here typed, 50 Shades series.
Oh, trilogy, whatever. You know what I meant. Come on. They're gonna go all the way with these.
I know what you meant. I just can't believe they're doing it. I mean, the book doesn't even have a sequel. Does it even have a second book?
Yeah, there's a trilogy. There's like 50 Shades of Grey, then there's 50 Shades Darker, and then there's, like, I don't know what the third one is, but we'll call it 50 Shades Too Much.
Serious? Oh, my God.
It's already out. It's a full trilogy, and, apparently it gets worse before it gets better, but who cares? I just wanted to laugh at it. So, well, we have. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the fact that movie's as terrible as we thought it would be.
Oh, let's just go on.
All right, moving on. James, did you ever watch the TV show Community?
I have not, but I've heard nothing but good things.
It is an awesome show. I really liked the first two seasons really well. The show creator, Dan Harmon, he's just a genius with some of this stuff, and because I go to college, we both do, it's a show that I can relate to. Some things that happen at this fictitious college are just hilarious, but so close to reality, you just feel like you've lived through it already. But seasons 3 and 4, they had gotten rid of, the showrunners had gotten rid of Dan Harmon, and the show dipped in quality big time. So for season 5, they brought him back, but by that time the network had canceled the show, and so they just finished it out. And all the actors thought their contracts had ended, and then Yahoo came in and bought the rights and started up season 6. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. It might have been just last week. They aired the first 2 episodes, and then the third one was this week. I believe Dan Harmon is back, and it's still pretty funny. I actually still kind of enjoy it. But yeah, it's definitely one to get into. If you're like me and you went from Community to Rick and Morty, the cartoon show, because Dan Harmon was a crew.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
No way. That show is hilarious.
I am so glad that you enjoy it. It is so funny, and I can't wait for season 2 to start. I saw the sneak peek from Comic-Con where they just showed a couple rough sketches with the voiceover work. It was just so priceless. It's total Rick and Morty fashion of completely outrageousness. I mean, crossing space, time, and dimension just as much, and oh god, such a funny show. Definitely recommend it as well as Community. But if you're looking to get into it and you only want the good stuff, just watch the first 2 seasons. And I guess if you want to go forward from there, do it. It was a good show. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad it's back. My favorite episode is the Dungeons and Dragons episode.
Oh my.
They played a version of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and in the first one, Chevy Chase just does the best villain. He's great. Yeah, it was pretty good. Speaking of shows that are coming back, X-Files is going to make a return. Can you believe it?
I'm disappointed. I enjoy the X-Files, despite the fact there are no aliens in the show. I liked it a lot. Why are they bringing it back, though? Like, who remembers... Okay, that's a lie. Everyone remembers X-Files. But who wanted X-Files?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of the fan base that thought it would be a good idea, I'm sure.
What could they do? They ended it so perfectly. They had another movie, which, spoiler alert, there are no aliens in that movie either.
Yeah, it was still a really good movie.
It was a good movie. I liked it. But it doesn't, I don't think it warrants coming back on TV, especially for 6 episodes.
Yeah, so see, so you see what they're doing. They're only going to do a 6-episode run. They'll bring back the original actors, although they haven't really said what they're going to do with them. But both of the actors said they're super excited. And it's the same thing. I think it's the Fox network that does this, and they did the same with the show 24. After it had ended, they brought it back for like a 13-episode run, and people really liked it. They thought it was a good idea. They liked seeing those heroes come back, and it worked out. So I think they're just trying a smaller scale version for X-Files. And, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the show, but I do think that people will probably enjoy it, provided it just doesn't suck completely.
I hope not, because the finale kind of sucked.
Yeah, there were a lot of people let down by that. But they're going to do the same thing with the Heroes show. So I think it's called Heroes Reborn or Heroes Returned or something. Did you ever watch the Heroes show?
No. My girlfriend's trying to get me to watch that show. And I've seen a couple, and I've always been interested. It looks good.
Oh, it is. The first season was so incredible. I remember I think it was my first year of college. My roommates had invited all these friends over, and they all skipped class for like 2 days straight because they were just glued to that show, and they couldn't let go. And I had to go back through and rewatch it because I was still, dedicated to my studies and went to class. But, yeah, I look forward to that one. I'm hoping that it is a better show than the way the last season of Heroes ended, because...
Oh, yeah. I've only heard.
Yeah, that last season went downhill in a hurry. But, whatever. Moving forward, they just another actor to the roster for the new Independence Day sequel. Vivica Fox will come back as the stripper turned wife. I'm not sure what her job title became after she quit stripping and the world, was half destroyed by aliens. But she's going to return to play the wife of Will Smith's character. And her son will be played by Jesse Usher. Will Smith still not going to return to the show. My opinion is because he's too good to show up, but or they can't pay him enough. I think they offered him $2 million, and he was like, "No, that's not enough. I need dozens of millions of dollars, producer credits, and something else that I'll come up with later."
I think he warrants it. I love Will Smith.
He does a good job for the most part, though. He's done a couple movies in the last few years. They've either really just been hit or miss. I'm not saying he's losing it, but I feel like he plays one role really well, and that is Will Smith. Yes. And his son really needs to stop acting, not good at it.
Gosh, it's a stain on this earth.
But I mean, that movie After Earth. It was so bad. It's like, come on, just make Will Smith the main character and let him kick some ass or something. Men in Black 3 did really well. Fans of that series enjoyed it for the most part. And it was fun seeing, who was it that played,
the younger K?
Yeah, the younger K.
I have no idea. But I enjoyed him.
Josh Brolin, the guy who plays Thanos, that's who it was.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
That's the same guy?
Crazy, right?
Oh my god, he's good.
Yeah, see,
he's good.
They have clearly pulled out a good actor for that role, but I mean, it's Thanos, we're not going to see him for a couple more years, so, can't get too excited. That's a long hype train to ride.
I am on that train. It is never too long.
But yeah, did you enjoy the first Independence Day?
Yeah.
I thought it was a pretty good movie. I'm not sure how I feel about a sequel, but they do have Jeff Goldblum returning. He was the, environmentally friendly but smoking cigars at the end scientist guy.
Really coming back?
Yeah. He's gonna star alongside Liam Hemsworth, or, Thor's little brother, as most people call him.
Oh my gosh. I have to see this movie just because of Jeff Goldblum.
They managed to get one of the main actors, so I figure, maybe the script wasn't terrible.
Or Jeff Goldblum's just looking for work.
It could be. He was in this show called The League. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the show before, but the premise is these friends are all friends because they're in the same fantasy football league. But only half the show is about fantasy football. The rest is a bunch of athletic star cameos and just hijinks, sometimes too ridiculous to be believable, but it is hilarious. And so they had Jeff Goldblum on there as one of the guy's dads, and he was hilarious. I can't really go into details because that show is pretty risque. It's pretty irreverent, and there's a lot of sexual stuff going on there. But it's funny if you can handle it. But yeah, he's going to be in the Independence Day sequel, so I'll probably go see it.
I totally understand the X-Files coming back and shows, but Independence Day too? What could they do? The same aliens are going to come back. Are they going to beat them the same way? See, uploading a virus on an app from an iPhone this time.
It's possible. That is one of my fears. Is that I think it would be okay if they brought back the aliens from the first show, but they just need to do it in a different way. Maybe there's some subtlety thing where they kind of learn how to hide amongst the humans, and they've got this like stealthy spy trap they're gonna spring, or something. But if they just like show the aliens coming back and they like group the cast together and do the same stuff, then they're just gonna try and remake a successful movie while saying it's different, and it will fail. And
yeah,
that'd be sad because I really liked the first Independence Day, but I also kind of think that, America's in a different state than it was, 15, 20 years ago when that movie came out. And so I think people aren't going to feel the same way now as they did then. But, who cares?
I'll dollar theater it. There's no way I'm paying good money to see that. Oh, unless it's good. If I hear good things, I will go watch it.
But you will not midnight release that.
Midnight release, that is ridiculous.
Understandable. Did you ever hear about the book Ready Player One?
I have heard of it. I don't know anything about it.
It's kind of a video game-esque book. It's a really good book. I read a book similar to it a couple years ago called The Eye of Mines. I think his name's James Dashner. He wrote the Maze Runner trilogy and then moved on to this kind of futuristic computer world style quadrilogy that it's going to be. The last one comes out this year, but I'm not caught up. This book kind of plays off of a similar theory. On Ready Player One was done four or so years ago, and basically what happens is this guy is a really good, we'll just call them gamers. There's this computer world, I think it's called Oasis, and the original creator left an Easter egg somewhere in this world, and you have to solve these clues and find the 3 keys to open up the final gate and then pass the test to basically become the king of Oasis, of this computer world. And you basically get the ability to kill and resurrect people's avatars at will, and you can destroy the program if you want, etc., etc. But there's this one character who's basically just the main protagonist, and he finds the first key before anyone else does, but refuses to help anyone find it. And so just stuff spirals out from there as he and other people try to find the 3 keys and become I'm not sure it's king, but I'm just going to call it King of the Oasis. And it's a really good story. There's a romantic story in there too, of course. And I thought it was a really good book, and I enjoyed it. I recommend it. But they just got Steven Spielberg signed on as the director for that movie. What do you think? I mean, it's Steven Spielberg. He's tied to a lot of films that we're fans of, or at least we were at one point in time. He doesn't have a terrible track record, but I don't think he's ever done a movie quite like this before. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you even think that premise sounds good?
I think the premise is good. I think I've heard it somewhere through another book, but I can't remember because I have bad memory. But Steven Spielberg, he's good, but I don't think he can do this. I know he'll do a good job. And if anything, the movie won't be bad. At worst, it will be okay. But I just don't think this is something up his alley, to be honest with you. He tends to do things that he's comfortable with. So that's kind of a stretch because, Jurassic Park is a book and he adapted it. But he seemed to, at least, you could tell within the movie that he loved this concept. And so he knew about it, at least little information here and there, that it gave us a good movie. Video games, or at least what this book sounds like is a video game, I don't know. I don't want to say he's too old and he probably won't do a good job translating this book because of that age difference, but I don't know. It could be. It could be.
I'm not really sure. I mean, it does sound like a video game movie because the title is Ready Player One, so it's obviously there. I'm hoping that it will be done well. I enjoyed the book. It was a good read, and I would hope that the movie translates well, but we've seen all too well with all these dystopian future books by all-female writers with all-female leads. Hunger Games, Divergent. The Maze Runner kind of had a split lead with a boy and a girl, although the main lead kind of was the guy.
I have no problem with female leads in the dystopian world, but can we make them likable, actual interesting people to follow who don't whine all the time? Ugh. That's just my wish.
The answer to that is no, James. It will never happen.
Come on.
Nope, sorry. I have spoken. My rule is absolute. I am firm but cruel.
Why you do this to me? Why you do?
You know why. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll be pretty good. But let's just move on. Let's go on to our main topic of the night. So the Spider-Man movie is still 2 years out. It's got a ways to go. It doesn't start production for a while, but I kind of want to get into discussions anyway. It's been on my mind for a little while, and I figured why the hell not? We could talk about it. But, I mean, we already know who the hero's going to be. It's Spider-Man. They've said they want to set it back in high school where he's a teenager, so that's why they're looking for a younger actor. Even though Andrew Garfield was, he's not that old. But he definitely looked like more of a high schooler than Tobey Maguire, in my mind.
Well, Tobey Maguire was never meant to be a high schooler.
Fair enough.
Graduated.
Yeah, that first Spider-Man movie was pretty much graduation, but yeah, they're gonna take Spider-Man back to high school, so he's gonna be a young superhero. He's still pretty inexperienced, but and I'm not sure. I tried looking it up, but couldn't find a lot on what villains Marvel Studios will be allowed to use. Do they have access to his entire rogues gallery, or do they only have access to the ones that they have specific rights to? Because that whole trade-off is kind of weird to look at and understand, because basically Spider-Man can be used in the Marvel movies however they see fit, and they'll make the money from the movies that they make, and Sony will make the money from the movies they'll make. So I don't know what characters, aside from Spider-Man himself, the studio has access to. However, I've just decided that we're going to go through a bunch of the Spider-Man villains. We're going to take a look at some of his most notable ones, and try and decide who we think should be the Spider-Man villain for this movie. Who would create the most compelling story? It doesn't just have to be one. It could be multiple villains. They could maybe throw in some, back and forth from good to bad sides, like I was mentioning earlier, Black Cat. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea, but we're both pretty sure that'll never happen. We're going to talk about some of these villains, and just kind of decide who we think might be a good idea. Some of them may not be so, because it's not going to be an origin story per se, but it's not like he's known these villains his entire life. So some of them might require a spot in a later movie, but some of them I've read about in the comics. Most of these guys I've seen on the cartoon show from back in the 90s, and a few of them have appeared in the new Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon that's on Netflix.
I gotta watch that.
It's pretty good. It seems a little bit more kid-friendly. I'm not saying the one in the 90s was more adult-friendly, but it still holds up in my mind.
Yeah.
So, because I've watched it a couple times recently in the last few years, and there are a lot of villains that were represented in that show. They even, at one point in time, had Captain America for a couple episodes. So...
and I know an interesting fact about that show?
Go for it.
Not one punch was thrown in that entire series.
That's entirely possible. Slinging webs.
Yeah, no one. There's no fight. In fact, if you see any fights, there are no punches. There's only wrestling and tackles.
You're probably right. I never really paid attention to that specifically, but maybe I'll go back and look. But let's go through it. I remember at the beginning of the Spider-Man cartoon, one of the first villains that he has to face are the Spider Slayers, which were made by Alistair Smythe, who starts out as a guy in a floaty wheelchair, but eventually becomes a mutation, or a mutant with some crazy laser tentacles from his shoulders or whatever. And among other different skills, but do you remember much about Alistair Smythe?
Yes, I do. And we don't need him. He shouldn't happen, because I think superheroes, or at least the ones coming up and the ones before, especially in the last Spider-Man movie, I'm done with the villains being robotic or mechanical in some way. And even though Alistair Smythe isn't a machine, his Spider Slayers are, and I just think that's a whole mess we shouldn't even go into.
What about his wheelchair? It's a machine.
It's a machine.
Are you saying you don't like handicapped villains?
What if I'm saying what you're not saying?
Which could be anything. No, I get you. There have been a lot of machines. It's probably not the coolest thing, but I feel like it might be going too far if they try to just turn him into the, mutant Smythe right off the bat.
Yeah, we need some movies for that evolution to happen for the character. And even though Alistair Smythe was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man 2, we should just leave it as a fun little Easter egg. It shouldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't my top choice, but alphabetically he's right at the start, so he was the first one I looked at, and he was also at the start of the Spider-Man cartoon when his dad supposedly died, and so the Kingpin uses this, he didn't die, they froze him in a capsule or whatever, but the Kingpin lied and let him think that his dad was dead, and then convinces him to work for him.
Yeah,
and build his own. We're gonna get to the Kingpin here pretty soon. He's on the list for sure, but there's a whole bunch of facets to that one that, maybe we're not looking at just yet, but we'll get to it. So, Alistair Smythe, not our top choice, but he is a pretty good villain, but I don't think he's gonna show up in any of the movies. The next one I'm pretty sure they're not going to use, but Carnage.
Let me tell you right off the bat, there will be no symbiotes as villains in the next coming Spider-Man movies.
Because they're planning on making their own Venom movie.
Well, I don't even think the Venom movie is going to happen, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you're probably right. I remember reading that they wanted to use Carnage as Venom's villain, and so that Venom would try to become, an anti-hero of sorts, so that he would be a bad guy, but he's also got his own villains that he has to fight against.
Yeah.
And Carnage he's always been super villainous to me. Like, he's way more over the top than Venom is, just, depending on who Venom's currently possessing. But Carnage possessed a psychopath, and it matched the personality of the, name Carnage, and he was just crazy. I remember him in the cartoon. I remember when they brought him back and gave him his own comics, no less. That team up with Spider-Man and Iron Man against the Iron Rangers and then the Carnage symbiote. And it was just funny to see they caught a strand of the webbing or something that was Carnage, his DNA, and they didn't know what it was, and so Iron Man took it back to his lab, and when he puts Peter Parker on his speakerphone comm line or whatever, and Peter Parker's voice enters the lab, like all of a sudden the DNA like starts freaking out because it knows who Peter Parker is and it hates him and wants to kill him.
Yep. Carnage is so cool.
Yeah, Carnage himself, and then what's the name of the guy he possesses? It's
Cletus Cassidy.
There we go. Yeah, another one of those names where the first letter of both names are the same. Yeah, Cletus Cassidy, a psychopathic murderer, and the perfect host for Carnage. Yeah, you're probably right they won't have him, but I think he would be a great villain. He would definitely challenge Peter Parker, although probably too much as a teenager. Push him to his limits, no doubt. Because he possessed a serial killer, and he's a crazy-ass symbiote himself, and so the two combine to just create this force that, not only combats Spider-Man physically, but morally as well, because Spider-Man's a good guy, and he wouldn't do that sort of stuff.
See, that would be a great movie, but if we were really going to introduce Carnage appropriately and to make sense, we would have to have 4 Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
For that to happen.
Yeah. Or, do you think that they would have to have Venom in there, or do you think they could just somehow pull off Carnage another way?
Well, I've seen adaptations where Carnage is pulled off another way, but it's always bad. You have to have at least Venom prior to having Carnage. Always.
Yeah, but then they cast him into space, didn't they? Like, ripped him in half or something and threw him into Earth's low orbit, and eventually he comes back down somehow.
Yeah, he's back. He possessed a woman this time.
Yeah. It's crazy. He's an incredible villain, and I sort of secretly wish that he could maybe be the villain, but like I said, I think for the Spider-Man movie that Marvel does, it might be a bit too much.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so let's go ahead and move on then. Since it's, clearly not that one. Or maybe, who knows. One that I don't know would be a great idea, but who the heck knows, Chameleon. He's based off of he's a guy, his name's Dmitry Smerdakov. He's a Russian spy who had a knack for disguises. And, yeah, I remember seeing him in the cartoons more than I ever saw him in the comics, where he just always ended up being the shapeshifter that helped out other villains in the process. He helped out the Sinister Six a couple of times. He helped sneak into the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier to try and break out the Black Cat. The Black Cat's father. I don't remember what his name was. Maybe he was just the cat. And I don't think he would be a very good villain for Spider-Man to face on his own, just because his superpower is just changing into other people. And it feels like he could, create some big plot, but he would never be the major villain. He would just be a cog in the machine.
Yeah, I like Chameleon, but this should not happen. He's too silly. Come on. He dresses up as people flawlessly. But how many times are you willing to put up to see that on the screen?
Yeah,
That's just going to be weird.
And sometimes he is just ridiculous. I remember the one, I can't remember where it was in the comics, but he takes Harry's image and is trying to sneak into one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. bases for some reason or another. And the way they recognize him because they're spies is because he put the eye patch on the wrong eye. It's just like, oh my God. I feel like for a guy who's a master of disguise, that's a pretty big oversight.
Yeah. Huge. That can only go so far. Chameleon.
I don't know. In the cartoons, he has that, specialty belt that just projects an image over him. And so he looks like somebody else, but he, really isn't. And then he's got that, weird Voldemort face that's, pale skin and no nose.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that no nose feature.
Yeah, it's really weird. But, Chameleon, probably not. Maybe he could be a servant of a bigger villain, but definitely not the major one.
Yeah, he's a side character. Totally is.
I've got listed here a bunch of villains that were in previous Spider-Man films. They've had the Green Goblin twice, maybe 3 times already. It's hard to say depending on how you view it. But they had the Willem Dafoe, the James Franco version, and then the, poor man's Draco Malfoy kid.
Poor man's Draco. Oh.
I don't remember his name. He was just the Green Goblin in Amazing Spider-Man, and he just looked ridiculous.
Yeah, he did.
But there's no way they're gonna do the Green Goblin, even though he's one of the major Spider-Man villains. And Doc Ock, I don't know. They could. I know Electro won't be in there because they just used him, and he wasn't the most well-received villain. Doc Ock, however, in Spider-Man 2, I actually enjoyed that one. It's actually the highest rated of all the Spider-Man films right now.
Oh yeah,
people enjoyed it. Good. Yeah, it was a pretty good film. I always thought that it was that train scene where his mask comes off and everybody sees him. It's just like, I guess. I mean, there are several million people in New York, and what's the chance of any of them knowing who he is already?
Yeah.
Or seeing him again and be like, oh my god, that's that guy who was Spider-Man. Oh my god, that's totally him. And then they pester him about it or something. Who knows? I mean, and obviously, during that year, what was that, 2000 something? Camera phones weren't a huge thing, so obviously people weren't snapping pics.
Yeah.
But I really still enjoyed that movie. It was a weird take on the Spider-Man losing his powers, because they did it in the comics and they did it in the cartoon, the old Spider-Man cartoon, but because in every other iteration, Spider-Man's web shooters are a device he has on his wrists, and instead in the Tobey Maguire universe, it was like some bio-webbing that came out of his arm. And in the comics and in the cartoon, he just loses his ability to stick to walls, and I guess his spider senses start to go away too. And so I thought it was a weird adaptation, but it still did really well, and I still enjoyed it. So, although he did throw his identity away a lot, during that movie.
But in the whole Spider-Man comics, that's just a normal thing. That's just everyday stuff, man.
But yeah, I think Doc Ock stands a chance, if not in this first movie, to return later. Doubt they'll do a Superior Spider-Man kind of run, but
I know
it'd be crazy.
I would be the first one to buy tickets 5 years in advance
to the Superior Spider-Man.
Oh my gosh, that is the dream that will never happen. I mean, Doc Ock would be great to see again, but I kind of don't want him to be in the new movie because he's just so portrayed perfectly well in number 2.
Yeah, they did a good job there. So then the next one, speaking of goblins, but I have a tough decision with saying this one is good or not, because it's Hobgoblin, everyone, and he is a good villain. But since we've had so many Green Goblins, do they really want to do just a different version of that? Because basically the Hobgoblin steals Norman Osborn's equipment and takes his formula that he uses to turn himself super strong and modifies it so he doesn't go crazy, which, I mean, come on, when
does that ever happen?
Yeah, when does that... What the heck? But yeah, he makes it so he becomes really strong without losing his mind, and then he steals Green Goblin's equipment, and he's kind of just a Green Goblin 2.0 or something. I'm not sure. He ends up being a mercenary a lot of the times. Like, he ends up teaming up with the Kingpin or Norman Osborn or somebody to just as a means to a bigger end. But Roderick Kingsley is the first Hobgoblin, and he ends up having a bunch of doppelgangers dress up as Hobgoblins, and he kills them to, remove suspicion of his involvement so that people won't think he's the Hobgoblin. But they've had, 4 or 5 Hobgoblins throughout the years in the comics. I feel like with all of the goblins that they've had in the past, this is one that they probably won't. Although, in the cartoons, in the comics, he's been pretty formidable. And in fact, I still remember that one episode of the Spider-Man cartoon where he fires off rockets at Spider-Man, and it leaves it to be continued, oh my gosh, this guy could kill Spider-Man. He has the ability.
This is it. This is the match. No, I'm tired of goblins. If I if I'm going to put up with I love Hobgoblin, but if I'm going to put up with any Hobgoblin in the movie, it's Green Goblin. But I am tired of Green Goblin. And it's just Green Goblin in orange.
It's true.
Yeah, we don't need that.
All right, so definitely not the Hobgoblin. Moving on, we got Hydro Man. Do you remember Hydro Man?
Yeah, this is... No.
He's kind of like a Sandman, but he's made of water.
Oh, one of the most least interesting people ever. And then they made him so complicated in the TV show because he's a clone. And oh no, so is Mary Jane a clone.
And they have water powers because that's what happens when you become cloned.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it was a crafty way that Spider-Man did finish him off in those episodes. Like, they used the newspapers, and then because he was slowly losing his stability, and then they get him on the roof where there's no more water, and they smash him apart so he evaporates. But obviously, in true comic book style, no one's ever dead, because he's now in the air, and eventually he will recollect. And it was still a clever way. It's better than some of the other ways some villains have been finished off, but I don't think... Man, we're just going through villains we don't think are going to be inside this movie. We're going to get there. I promise the next couple will definitely be villains we can look at. But definitely Hydro Man. He's teamed up with a few people in the past, although the major one is Sandman, where they become the Mud Monster. Yeah, it's a really weird combination, and it makes you not want to think about the science as much because these two guys... merge themselves together somehow. But I mean, let's be honest, it's comic books. If you try to put too much science into it, it just ends up ruining it for you. Because it obviously could never happen. But
this can happen. An alien from another planet can come to ours and live in Kansas.
Granted, I mean, there's no proof that it can't happen, but still.
Yeah, see, I'll bet you in 5 years there'll be a farm boy that'll save us all.
It's secretly me. I moved to Utah.
Oh, well then this is never going to happen.
Dang.
You're stuck here. No, this place does stuff to you.
Oh boy. Alright, moving on, we have, I have next on the list, the Kingpin. He sort of has superpowers. He's super rich. He's, super crafty. He's able to run a he calls himself the Kingpin of Crime, eventually, because he runs his own crime syndicate. And he seems more like a guy who would have lackeys who fight the Spider-Man, but I remember in the first volume of the Ultimate Spider-Man runs, I have that Ultimate Spider-Man collection over there, and it has the Kingpin as one of the villains in there, and it's hilarious because he's really strong and he kind of gives Spider-Man a run for his money, but when Spider-Man returns, he's got these 3x5 cards with all these insults. And he just tells the Kingpin, stop. I came here and I want to say something to you. And he reads through all of the jokes he wrote on the 3x5 cards before the Kingpin eventually gets really mad. And then for the rest of the series, every time the Kingpin shows up, Spider-Man rolls in, and he's the super, snarky, quick-witted Spider-Man that you think of that a lot of people thought Andrew Garfield did really well. And I agree, too. He did a good, quick-witted Spider-Man, but he was not the best Peter Parker. But anyways, it's funny just to see how Spider-Man interacted with the Kingpin, where he'd always just say, it doesn't matter how much you scream at me, they're not going to make the kid's meal size any bigger.
Oh, his superpower of being fat is amazing.
He seems like the kind of guy who would have lackeys like the Hobgoblin, or maybe Hammerhead, or Tombstone, working under him, or the Shocker. I've got the Shocker on the list here somewhere.
Oh, I love Shocker.
He's not like super duper powered, but he does have those gauntlets in the suit that reduce the, vibrations and shocks that come to his body so that he can survive the use of those gauntlets. But I feel like if they did the Kingpin, it would have to be like he's a villain, but he has some lackeys. But they did that in the Daredevil movie with Bullseye.
Yeah.
And we all know how that turned out.
Oh, the greatest movie ever.
But they're going to bring the Kingpin back as the Daredevil villain in the Netflix show that comes out next month.
See, that's why I would like to have Kingpin as a villain. If none other than connect the universes of Daredevil and Spider-Man. Because we all know Daredevil is going to be part of the cinematic universe, but how cool would it be just to see Kingpin from Daredevil be the one to be the villain in one of the Spider-Man movies?
It would be awesome to see them cross over. They want the universe to, constantly feel connected. And these Netflix-only shows that are coming out, it would be a good way to still connect them to the universe like they've done with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where even this week they dropped a lot of Easter egg bombs on us for the upcoming, sort of the upcoming Avengers movie, but really the Civil War movie that comes out next year. There's even this funny scene where they've now introduced the character Daisy, who is also known as Quake. She has earthquake powers. She's one of the Inhumans, and they have her on the show, and these two people are arguing over which Avenger she's most like. No, she's like Captain America. She's a hero. No, she's like the Hulk, has these uncontrollable powers. She needs to be cured. No, she's like Captain America. She can do good for the world. And it's just funny how they're going back and forth and how there needs to be some kind of regulation or something. And I feel like these are all stories that are going to lead up to the Civil War story that's going to come out next year. I think they're going to kind of leave some things hanging for us at the end of this season, and then this fall they're going to start bringing them up so that when Civil War hits us, we're all just going to be blown away. And so it would be fun, universe connected that way, if they have Kingpin in this first Daredevil series, and then they, maybe not as the only villain, but as one of the villains with some lackeys. I think he'd be a pretty good choice.
Yeah, I think so too. Just so we can see Daredevil too. No, he's perfect.
Oh, that'd be cool.
But he's not my top pick.
No, mine either, but he would be a good one. So let's move on then. The next one I have is Kraven the Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
There have been a couple versions of him through all different avenues, like the comic book or the cartoons and whatnot. I know in Ultimate Spider-Man, he's just a celebrity at first, and so when Spider-Man goes up against him, he just kicks his butt right off the bat, no problems, and he just thinks, oh, you're just a TV guy. You don't have any powers at all. But then they bring him back in the Ultimate Sinister Six crossover, where Spider-Man teams up with the Avengers, or the Ultimates as they're called. Mm-hmm. And then the Sinister Six get together. They're really five, but then they, blackmail Spider-Man into joining them. But they have Kraven the Hunter, and he's like a psychopath. Somebody's tinkered with his DNA and given him super strength and some increased speed and agility, awareness, and he is a little bit unstable. But I also remember in the cartoon, they just had him as this biologist / safari guy who he and his lover are looking for a former co-worker or comrade or whatever. Comrade, because he's Russian.
Oh.
They're looking for, when they find him in the jungle, he had used this serum on himself and became like half wild beast, half human. And Kraven gets attacked and his lover has to use it on him, and he becomes the same way, and he actually becomes a good foe for Spider-Man because while he's a hunter, and so he has the ability to sniff out trails and find them wherever they're hiding. And it was actually a couple of good different runs, although with the Sinister Six and the Ultimate Spider-Man, he pretty much just gets his butt kicked and he's done. But I think Kraven the Hunter would be a good villain for them to bring on. A high school Spider-Man could actually be a pretty fair fight between the two of them.
Yes, I believe this is the perfect villain that should be in the next movie. Especially for a teenager. It's just everything you've just explained. It just makes sense. And Kraven is just so crazy. Oh man, I love Kraven. So cool. But then he got weird. And then he got cool again. And now he's just really weird. but I think this will work out perfectly.
Well, at one point in the comics, he believes he has killed Spider-Man because he buried him alive, and then he goes and commits suicide.
Yeah, that's all weird. It's actually revealed Kraven knew he didn't kill Spider-Man at all. He just, what was it? He put a sleeping dart in him. And with that, did everything and then killed himself. So he knew he wasn't dead, but he decided to kill himself anyways and pretended and shouted, "I killed him." He's weird. He's seen better days.
But he's still a good choice for the villain.
Oh, phenomenal choice. Kraven would be great. You can get all sorts of cool scenes going with some jungles or a museum in the jungle. Come on. This is set up perfectly. Adult, hunter, years of experience going against a teenager just starting off, or not just starting off, but in like the midway of his superhero career.
He's still in his younger years, yeah.
Yeah. This would be great. And it's definitely serious enough but tame enough for family and comic book lovers or people that just want to see cool action.
And for teenage Spider-Man to handle.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, next we're going to say he's my number one choice is this next one. I think this is the best option for them to go with because he's somebody they haven't even mentioned. He's somebody that they can tie into a universe that Marvel Studios recently reacquired the rights to, although I don't know if they'll ever do it.
They won't.
They recently reacquired the rights to Blade, and I wish they'd, get something on for this one, but probably not. I don't know. But I'm thinking they should do Morbius. Michael Morbius. He's like, in the cartoon, he's just a fellow college student with Peter Parker and Felicia Hardy and whatnot. And he's trying to win this competition so that they can get a grant for their school to be able to do special research with Doc Connors helping head that project. And so whoever wins gets to be Doc Connors' assistant. And Peter Parker probably stands the best chance because he's super smart. But Michael Morbius finds out that he's got some like secret blood, and this is during the Man-Spider thing, yeah, where Peter Parker's trying to figure out what's going on with himself because he's going through some changes. And in college. And he breaks into Peter Parker's locker and finds this vial of blood and decides to start experimenting on it. And he uses that genetic recombinator laser, and a vampire bat sneaks in the lab and is flying around. And, one thing leads to another and he gains vampire powers. But he also has to, drain the plasma from other beings. He doesn't kill them, but he does hospitalize them. And the number continues to grow, and Spider-Man's got his own problems with dealing with Morbius, and eventually Blade crosses over into the show, and I think Michael Morbius is a good pick. Maybe not as a fellow high school student, but maybe not. I just wouldn't think they'd do the Man-Spider story. They just find another way to bring him in. Maybe Morbius is he's this Nobel-winning chemist who's working on a new experiment to cure this blood disease, and he uses obviously vampire bats are in there somewhere, and the experiment goes wrong, and he gains these powers, and eventually he steals Spider-Man's plasma by accident by just attacking Peter Parker and getting lucky, and he becomes super powerful and goes crazy. I don't know. Before they turned him into the giant winged vampire bat guy and then changed him back later, I thought he was a really strong foe for Spider-Man because at times Spider-Man could not sense him with his spider senses, and it actually became a challenge for him to fight him because he could fly, he's super strong, but at the same time his weakness is he has to feed, and he can't be out during the light or the daytime, like most nerds. And so they would be able to relate, and that's my number one pick. I think he's a strong enough villain. Nobody's talked about him. Nobody's done him in the movies yet, and he would be somebody that I think would be a strong villain for Spider-Man, but not too strong.
I agree with you. You pretty much said everything. I can't add anything else. I think he'd be good. I think he should, but, like you, I'll put him in maybe third of people that should be on the list to be in the next movie as a villain.
Maybe on a sequel, probably.
Yeah.
I do kind of think Craven would be a better Spider-Man 1 Marvel Studios video villain, and maybe Morbius would be a good second one when he's like in college, maybe. Because it seems like it would be better if they did something like that. But if they just copy the same story from there, then no, that would suck. But yeah, Morbius, he's my top pick. But we've got a couple other names on here. Maybe we'll just burn through them. I don't know. Mysterio, I don't think. I mean, I put him on here because he's a villain, the Death Spider-Man. Because the way they tell it, he is the special effects stuntman who becomes disgraced because something went wrong on a set. He set up some explosions wrong, and Spider-Man shows up and saves the day. So obviously he blames Spider-Man because, you know, it's whatever. People gotta have an outlet for their problems. And so he comes back with that fishbowl costume. But the cool part about Mysterio is that he's, like, super smart. He creates these, like, you know, illusion cubes that just create environments or creatures that freak you out. And sometimes you can't tell if what he's got coming at you is real or not. And it takes Spider-Man a while to figure out that his spider sense won't go off if it's not real. And he just keeps getting his butt kicked until he finally realizes this. But it's fun to watch. But I still don't think that Mysterio would be that villain.
And this is my second choice for villain.
Oh, really?
That should go up. I think it's great. I mean, we are talking about a high schooler, and if you're going to put this type of person who has, you know, experience within the Hollywood industry world, which is big around these days, you know, you can have Peter Parker go to a show with his high school friends to go see this and pretty much get the origin down of why Mysterio would hate him. I think it'd be good. I would need to flesh out the idea a bit more, but I think for a high schooler going up against this person is also a good match for someone who's just starting out their superhero career. Because you want Spider-Man's trying to learn more about himself, just like you said, maybe as he's growing, he'd be like, wait, my spider sense does this if there's actual real danger, so this would be kind of a good stepping stone for him to go about starting with a villain that's not so dangerous but threatening, that will later go on to help him fight even stronger villains that pose more of a threat, because he learned about his abilities, what his spider sense can do, and more of his.
Yeah. It's definitely a good pick. You know, obviously, I already told what my number one pick would be, but you make a good point. He would be a good one for, like, Spider-Man to kind of show up, at a show, and they could nail that origin story almost down perfectly, and that wouldn't be a bad idea. The next one I got on here is Scorpion. Oh
boy.
Well, they mentioned that scorpions are the natural hunter or predator of spiders, so that could be cool. He's just Mac Gargan, there we go. He gets paid by J. Jonah Jameson to undergo this experiment, although, you know, I think J. Jonah Jameson lies to him about it and kind of lures him into it. So he'll gain these powers and get this suit that spits out acid and has that fancy spiked tail and etc. And he's on the Sinister Six a lot, but he ends up going on to, like, fight Spider-Man a ton, and they go back and forth, and they're usually pretty evenly matched, except for, you know, Spider-Man can climb buildings and swing around, and Scorpion cannot.
Yeah.
But it would also be weird because I don't know if they're going to get J. Jonah Jameson to ever star in the movies again.
I hope they do, but there's no way they can top the other person.
Exactly. There's no way they can beat J.K. Simmons, or at least that's what everybody thinks, and I'm pretty sure most of the movie people think that too. Like, he was like the perfect incarnation of J. Jonah Jameson, and I think that's one of the reasons why in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, they just, you know, Peter Parker communicated with him through emails.
Yeah, which is pretty dumb.
And that was the best they could do, because I'm sure J.K. Simmons said, no, I'm not doing that anymore. But, if they were going to nail the origin down, they would have to get J. Jonah Jameson in there.
How amazing would it be if they got J.K. Simmons to reprise his role?
It would be pretty sweet, and they might. If they do something like this, it's entirely possible that they could.
Yeah.
But I kind of get the feeling that in this first Spider-Man movie, they're probably not going to try and put a Jameson in there. But I mean, what do I know? The next one we talked about a little bit earlier, it was Shocker. He's just he's not like one of Spider-Man's greatest villains. He just has that suit that allows him to survive the vibration blast from his gauntlets, and which I'm pretty sure in the cartoons and comics for the most part had nylons, which was fun to watch. But he wasn't a bad villain, but I feel like if he were to be in the movie, he would serve as a lackey to somebody like the Kingpin, or, he would be a team up with the Hobgoblin or somebody who, he could team up with or fight alongside, or just be the servant of. I don't think he would be a great major villain.
No way.
He's not really ever one anyway, so.
No, I think he would be a great Easter cameo villain in all the movies. And what I mean by that is we see him as pre-Shocker in the first one, maybe for like about 5 minutes, and Peter stops him. In the second movie, we have him with his suit and everything Shocker is, running amuckus, and then Peter goes to stop him again. And in the third one, have him there again, almost getting the upper hand of Spidey, but Peter stops him again. I think that would be funny, a consistent joke for each movie. Be like, oh, here's this guy. He's not really threatening. He's just there. He thinks he's all that, but he's not. Just to throw in something fun for the comic book readers, I would imagine. It won't happen, but I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. He's not at the top. The last one I have on here would be Vulture. Definitely not my top pick, although he is one of the oldest Spider-Man villains ever. I went back and read some of I can't remember what they were called. They were just like the Stan Lee re-releases or something. They took the original Spider-Man comics, colored them in, and made small collections of them that you could get. And Vulture shows up right off the bat.
Yeah.
I think he was in the second Spider-Man issue, and I mean, those comics back then, they're just, you can tell that times were different.
They're so wacky.
50 years ago, but that's just, there have been a couple different Vultures, but the first one and the oldest, I guess, is Adrian Toomes, who just, he's got this business, and he kind of turns to a life of crime where he develops an anti-gravity pack with, the wings that help him fly, and I guess he just decided it would be great to make it a bird costume. Call himself the Vulture. He also gets these gauntlets to let him steal the youth from somebody for a short time, and so he uses them from time to time to increase his longevity and his power, so he can pull off certain heists or just crimes in general. It could be an interesting fight for Spider-Man, a young Spider-Man, as that was one of his first villains to begin with. I know back in the day when they were planning on making a fourth Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film, that Vulture was supposed to be the next villain that he faced. But, I don't know.
I heard about that too. Yeah, they should steer away from this person as well. I mean, it'd just be too funny watching an old man in a bird costume just fly around. I want to get you, Spider-Man. And comes and swoops in, gets knocked out in one punch because he's old.
A couple of those I don't have on the list, but, I mean, they're there. We're just going to brush over them quickly, too, because we've already gone past the hour limit. We don't have a limit. I just figure an hour is a good time. There's the Stan. I don't think they're going to do him again.
No.
He's kind of a cool villain, but it's not going to happen. They've got Doc Connors / the Croc.
I'm so sick of him now.
Which, they did in Amazing Spider-Man. So they might have a Doc Connors in the show, but I don't think they'll have a Croc. I've got the Rhino, who was sort of in this last Spider-Man film, but the weird robot suit and whatnot.
Yeah, that ruined everything that Rhino is. Yeah, leave him out.
He's just a really huge guy in a Rhino costume. He's kind of like a Juggernaut of sorts, but, he's the Rhino.
He's the poor man's Juggernaut.
Yeah, he's something, all right. He's on that list too. I can't think of any others that I got going on, but Spider-Man easily has one of the biggest list of villains, or his own rogues gallery, as sometimes they're called. Although I'm pretty sure that's the name of the Flash's villains.
The Rogues Gallery.
Well, they're called the Rogues, but yeah, you can just call it a Rogues Gallery. Spider-Man has a ton of villains. There's Spot, the dimensional rift guy, but that seems a bit too much.
I've always liked Spot. Always. And they never do enough with him. It makes me so angry.
Spider-Man's entered into a few other, crossovers with other Marvel villains. He teamed up with Doctor Strange and fought Mordo that one time. He's teamed up with the X-Men a couple of times. That's always pretty cool.
You ever read or seen the comic where he tries to stop the Juggernaut?
Nope.
It is phenomenal. He doesn't. Spoiler, he never even comes close. But it gets to the point where the X-Men come along and then they stop Juggernaut. But before they take him away, Juggernaut's like, man, I gotta tell you, Spidey, you're one annoying, persistent person. And that's pretty much it.
Compliments. Yeah. But I don't think that. I mean, obviously, that's a Fox property.
That's not going to happen.
But I mean, Marvel might have some rights to other villains that I just didn't see when I was doing the research. But I feel like we covered a pretty good list.
You know what they should ignore? Jackal. They shouldn't even come close to Jackal.
He's not even on the 8 villains that I got.
I know, but he's one of those villains that always comes up. You know why?
I do not.
You should, because he's the a-hole who started the whole clone saga. He's the one who made the Peter Parker clones, and oh my gosh, is that a whole nother thing.
Yeah, well, he's one. I'm pretty sure they won't do Venom, because Venom's supposedly going to have his own movie, so they'll skip over him.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm still saying that movie's never going to happen.
Well, it's possible. I mean, I think Sony right now, they're reeling from the decision to let Spider-Man move over into the Marvel Universe, but to also share him. And so now I feel like they're just going to put everything on hold for right now, and they're going to wait and see what Marvel plans to do with Spider-Man, and then, just go from there. I don't know. It feels like Spider-Man's kind of on, I don't want to say nice, but he's on some strange water right now.
Well, that's the miracle of Spider-Man. He can be in that situation, and no matter what, people will always go watch a new movie of his.
He has made a lot of money for Sony. So, yeah, there it is. Spider-Man's villains. There are a lot of them. Quite possibly more than most other superheroes have out there. I'm not sure where Marvel's gonna take it, but I think they'll do a good job. I hope he shows up sort of only briefly in Civil War, and then he just gets his own movie and he's awesome. But yeah, that's it for today. Unless you have anything more you want to add to that.
No. Well, I'm going to add one thing. He should be all over the place in Civil War.
Oh yeah, I think they should give him a more prominent role.
Well, he is the main thing going on in the Civil War comics.
Yeah, but it is a Captain America film, and I feel like they've already got way too many actors in the film for it to be named Captain America Civil War. They should just name it Marvel Civil War. Because I feel like it's got to be Captain America's movie, and so he gets, he probably gets the most screen time, even though, Robert Downey Jr. is getting paid the most. And
oh, yeah.
That's Robert Downey Jr. And it's funny because, he's also said along the same lines as Hugh Jackman for Wolverine. They both said they would, play that character until they die. I know for Hugh Jackman, he is the Wolverine now.
Yep.
It's like the J. Jonah Jameson thing. There's really nobody else that can pull it off. And conveniently enough for Wolverine, he doesn't age practically ever, except for in that Old Man Logan series, which is awesome.
Oh my gosh.
And I can't wait until they do that, because they're gonna.
They have to. Would they be fools not to?
But yeah, I read an article today where they talk about how X-Men Apocalypse will be the end of this young X-Men trilogy. So they had First Class, then Days of Future Past, which is strange to call it a young X-Men trilogy, but I guess that the vast majority of that show was the younger X-Men.
Yeah.
And then they're going to do Apocalypse, which has a huge cast, but they said it's going to be the end for Michael Fassbender as Magneto and James McAvoy as Professor X.
Oh, darn, they're so good.
They are really good, and who knows if they'll come back. They might change their minds, but I think they've kind of got this idea where they don't want to hold on to that role, because they're both still pretty young.
Yeah, and they don't want to be typecasted as...
Exactly. Because that's kind of the downside, or the other side of the coin for Robert Downey Jr. and Hugh Jackman, is they've got these roles that they're willing to hold on to, but they kind of realize they have to.
Because they can't do anything else.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman will get some other roles, and he'll probably do fine, but Robert Downey Jr. is one where you just kind of wonder, because he was on that Ally McBeal show a long time ago, among a few other things. And then there were all those, I think it was like drugs and alcohol, or maybe just alcohol. He committed some crime, got arrested, and just kind of fell off the face of the earth for a little while. And then when he got the Iron Man role, but there were so many other people that were considered for that role. No surprise that, like, Nicolas Cage was one of them.
Oh, gosh, what world do we live in when he's considered a proper... No.
But, it's funny that he would, that he would get that idea in his head that he could be Iron Man, but, it's whatever.
I want you to think about that.
I have. But, anyways, we're just spinning off. We're just babbling now. We're gonna wrap this up, and maybe we'll talk about this stuff next time. But, thank you everybody for listening. Again, I am Mr. Vane. You can find us on Facebook. It's just the Mr. Vane Reviews page. Go ahead, give us a like, leave a comment. We're always posting the links to the episodes. I realize we're on episode 3 and episode 2 is only going to be put up probably today or tomorrow, but I'm working on it. School got really busy recently, some midterm projects and stuff, so I got held up, but we're going to be doing it. We're going to be doing this every other week and getting the show up in between, and possibly during the summer we'll do some extra stuff. Who knows? But, go ahead and check us out on Facebook. There's a link to the website where you can leave feedback. That's also, again, if you just want to bookmark that, you can also get links to the episodes. You can find us on SoundCloud. That's where I will post these episodes. And so you can just go ahead and subscribe there, and anytime we post a new episode, it will be there. And as time goes on, we'll definitely try and get ourselves linked up to something like iTunes where you can just download us automatically. And we'll move on. You can get us on Twitter, at Vane Demise. And that's about it. Go ahead, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And go ahead and tell us maybe something you'd like us to talk about next time. And, unless there's anything else, James, guess that's it. We will see you guys later.
Bye.